It's time for Brazil News Update. Well, the race heats up for the 22 presidential elections as Bolsonaro and his supporters in Congress scramble to pass measures to shore up his sliding popularity. This last week, the Chamber of Deputies passed the constitutional amendment deferring payments of government debts in order to free up resources in the federal budget to implement Bolsonaro's new aid package, known as Auxílio Brasil, or the Brazil Assistance. This will allow the government to disperse 400 reais a month, or about $80, to needy people and get through the economic crisis with rising inflation and unemployment. It's a program that is less comprehensive than Bolsa Familia or the family assistance plan of the Lula and Dilma governments, and it will end up right after the elections. It's designed to attract support for Bolsonaro among Brazil's poorest, especially because recent polls show that Bolsonaro's highest rejection rate is among the people earning the minimum monthly salary or just above it. However, now the measure goes to the Senate, where it might meet resistance and not pass. But at the same time that Bolsonaro is trying to distribute government resources to ensure his reelection, he disregards those suffering under the current situation. This past week, when surrounded by supporters at the presidential palace, he refused to take any responsibility for the current situation facing the over 14 million people unemployed. Asked about inflation, he responded, "Do you know who's responsible? I'm the one who refused to close stores. Amazing. A guy can't get it up at home, and I'm responsible." He then went on to attack the formula that the government agency has been using for decades to measure unemployment. In another attempt to use government resources to win the elections, the secret budget, or funds dispensed by the federal government with little or no transparency, this provision has been blocked by Rosa Weber, one of the justices of the Supreme Court. Her order was promptly ignored by the Bolsonaro government, and it remains unclear whether there will be a way to control the disbursement of federal funds to favor Bolsonaro's reelection. And speaking of his reelection, Bolsonaro has finally chosen his new political party, the Liberal Party, which is actually quite conservative. The party bosses hope that his appearing at the top of the ticket will have coattails for electing more candidates of the Liberal Party to the Congress next year. However, there are already problems with this planned marriage, since some of the leaders of the Liberal Party fear that having Bolsonaro as the presidential candidate will cause problems with forming local coalitions to guarantee that their candidates can get elected. So for the moment, the wedding, that is, the ceremony to celebrate his membership in the party, has been canceled. The question remains, will it ever actually happen? This is not the first time Bolsonaro has been jilted by a political party, realizing that he is toxic. We'll see if Bolsonaro manages to patch things up or whether he will have to seek out another engagement. At the same time, Sérgio Moro, the judge who oversaw the Lava Jato or car wash investigation that sentenced Lula to 13 years and for which Lula spent 580 days in prison, has now declared his intentions to run for president. Moro had always insisted that he was heading the anti-corruption task force due to his deep sense of civic duty, and his motives were in no way political. However, as was later revealed in leaked transcripts of his cell phone conversations on WhatsApp, and thereafter confirmed by the Supreme Court, Moro was actively colluding with the prosecutor in order to rush the charges against Lula through the courts to ensure that he would be ineligible to run in the 2018 presidential elections. Moro's reward for his loyalty to the far right was appointment by Bolsonaro to be the Minister of Justice in the new government. He faithfully fulfilled his role in Bolsonaro's far-right administration for over a year. Then, with his own political aspirations coming front and center, he found a convenient time to leave Bolsonaro's government. His complaint? That Bolsonaro wanted to interfere with his appointment of the head of the federal police. Now, this is the same person who had no problem interfering in a fair outcome of Lula's trial. The judge who swore he would never become a politician has now found a home in Podemos, a right-wing party that supports Bolsonaro in Congress. So much for being part of the opposition to Bolsonaro. Immediately after the announcement that Sérgio Moro had thrown his hat into the presidential ring, Bolsonaro stated that Moro had learned nothing from his time in government, or had he? Now it looks like Moro is trying to be the new Bolsonaro, with a program to fight corruption on both the left and the right, when he himself has been declared biased by the Brazilian Supreme Court. Moro now joins 11 other third-way candidates disputing second place in the presidential race with Bolsonaro, since Lula is way ahead in the polls. Vox Populi released its latest survey findings, in which Lula is projected to win the elections in the first round with 57% of the valid votes, and Bolsonaro is trailing with 27%, Ciro Gomes with 5%, and Moro with 3%. And in a Poder Data poll released on Friday, the majority of the population want to see Bolsonaro impeached. This week, the New York Times jumped into the political fray when it published an article arguing that Bolsonaro is trying to copy Donald Trump's playbook to delegitimize the 22 election in the midst of deteriorating poll numbers. The Brazilian ambassador in the United States sent a letter to the New York Times denouncing the article and argued that Bolsonaro was a firm defender of democracy in Brazil. It seems that the ambassador himself is also following Trump's playbook and defending alternative facts, as Bolsonaro has repeatedly threatened to mobilize the army in his favor against the Supreme Court, and he continues to question the honesty of Brazil's electric voting machines. Meanwhile, Governors João Dória of São Paulo and Eduardo Leite of Rio Grande do Sul are competing to get the Party of Brazilian Social Democracy to endorse their candidacy for president in a vote that will take place next Sunday. While this is going on, Lula has been traveling to Europe visiting progressive social democrats. He met with the likely future chancellor of Germany from the Social Democratic Party, as well as German union leaders, and will be giving a keynote speech in Paris to commemorate the 10th anniversary of his receiving an honorary doctorate at the Sciences Po. And in comparison to this, Jair Bolsonaro, who was a national embarrassment for his lack of diplomacy when he traveled to Rome for the G20 meeting. This week also marks the 4th anniversary of labor laws passed under the government of Michel Temer that ended many workers' protections. At the time, politicians argued that eliminating these labor rights would stimulate employment, when in fact just the opposite has happened, as unemployment has hovered around 14% over the last quarter, which is 2 percentage points greater than in 2017, before COVID-19 rocked the nation. So you can't blame it on the pandemic. Ricardo Berzonini, the former Workers' Party government minister of Labor and Social Security, has commented, quote, "The labor legislation was one of the pillars of the 2016 coup or impeachment against Dilma Rousseff. The attempt to weaken labor protection was on the agenda since the 1990s, but the PT government was an obstacle," end quote. Indigenous and Afro-Brazilians were prominently present in Glasgow this week, defending their territories and their rights. You can learn more about the Quilombolas, the Afro-Brazilian communities, fighting to protect their land, on my podcast and YouTube program, in which I interview Sean Mitchell about the fight to defend traditional communities on lands claimed by the Alcântara Space Center. Finally, I'd like to end on a positive note with the news that Gilberto Gil, the Afro-Brazilian singer and songwriter and former Minister of Culture under Lula, was given the honor of joining the Brazilian Academy of Letters, one of the most prestigious literary societies in Brazil. Parabéns, Gilberto Gil. You really deserve it. So those are the highlights for this week's Brazilian news update. I hope that you're enjoying the program. Brazil Unfiltered is 100% independent, free, and available to all. If you can, please support us at patreon.com/Brazil Unfiltered. The link is in the description below. Also, don't forget to like the video, and if you have not yet subscribed, please do so. Have a great week. Until next time, ciao. Até a próxima.